Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is chrism and I would like to invite you to this conversation about your Kundalini awakening experience or experiences, and I'm just going to go ahead and launch right into it. Today, I'm being given to talk about truth, honesty, and integrity. Where is your truth? What is truth to you? How do you feel about truth? How do you express your truth? And what expectations of truth do you have from other people? Where in your life is truth the most paramount activity in your human expression? And what does your Kundalini do with regards to truth? Well, what I have found in myself and in other people is that Kundalini will constantly impress upon an individual the importance of being truthful. Truthful to self, truthful to others, truthful to God, and truthful to the Kundalini, which, you know, the Kundalini is guiding you into these levels of truth, and it's very important for you to pay attention and follow that guidance. Truth of a situation isn't always appreciated by people. The truth of practice, truth of technique, truth of a religious concept or of a work ethic or of a relationship concept or things of this nature. Truth comes in many, many forms, and truth, like love, has many, many facets to it. It's not just as easy as, well, it's a truth or it's a lie, because different scenarios exist within different concepts of different societies about what truth is. What's true to a person living in a desert won't necessarily be true to a person that's living in a tropical zone. And so we need to understand that there are very, very many facets of truth that a person can enter into when they're working through the Kundalini and with the Kundalini. So it's very, very, very important for a person to understand what truth is, why truth is, and where levels of truth are. It looks like I'm sound is good. Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you for that kindness of the sound check. So yeah. So truth really, really matters within a Kundalini context. Truth, telling the truth, speaking your truth, the truth of your commitment, the truth of your promise, the truth of your the truth of the acceptance of the invitation of Kundalini to come into your life, and in many ways to begin to control your life. You are literally being controlled, guided through your life with the hand of the divine on your shoulder. Often that would be your left shoulder, but sometimes it's both. So the scenario of truth within your understanding is so crucial, so important, that I really cannot find the words to really let you know how absolutely necessary. You know, I don't like to always speak in absolutes, but in this, I have to speak in absolutes. And yet, within the absolutism of just a second here, I'm going to get out of a few things that are going to make noise here. Let's see here, there, and there, and back to us. Yes, within the absolutism that I'm speaking of with regards to truth, and at the same time I'm mentioning the plurality of truth, through the many different facets of truth, the many different societal interpretations of what truth is. Truth to an Aborigine may not be the same as truth to a person living in downtown London right now. And so it's very, very important for you to find the level of truth that your society represents and to stick to that truth. And your Kundalini will tell you and guide you what is appropriate and what is not. Within the Kundalini itself, Kundalini is a a, 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 personification in the physical and a personification of the spiritual energetic of truth. It is as if truth were a noun. I mean, truth were a tree. I mean, it's a physical object. Truth is a physical manifestation as well as a spiritual manifestation, and the physical manifestation of truth is very much dependent upon the perception of what truth is by a person, by an individual, and by that culture and that societal influence that individual is living within. And as the Kundalini begins to expand your understandings of truth, and it begins to expand what truth truly is, say a divine truth is very different from a societal-based physical truth. And so we have these two very, very different facets of the whole gem that truth is. But at this point, within the Kundalini continuum, that diamond of truth is the Kundalini, and it's the facets of truthful manifestation upon this world that represent the many diversities of truth on this world and within humanity, not just on this world, but on other worlds as well. And so it's hugely of paramount importance that a person begins to really, really follow their truth. And as you follow the truth, you really begin to understand what it is to have integrity of truth. And integrity of truth is truthfulness. What you say is how you're being honest about what you say. You're being honest about your commitments. You're being honest about the agreements that you make, and you know, you don't allow yourself to break those commitments, or to break that promise, or to break that agreement, to break that privacy, simply because it would be convenient for the ego to do so. You don't get to do that within the Kundalini. Kundalini will tell you. Kundalini will make you feel what it is when you break those commitments. And and so truth is not so elastic between the individual and the Kundalini. Truth has many facets. So once again, if you're an Aborigine living in the outback of Australia, and then you're another form of Aborigine living in the streets of San Francisco, well, you're going to have very, very different levels of truth, very, very different levels of understanding, very, very different levels of guidance within those truthful, honesty, integritus options that a person is having. I hope that's a word, integritus. I don't know, but there it is. I think you know what I'm talking about. The integrity of truth relates significantly to the integrity of honesty. These are not pliable in the sense that once you state these commitments, these levels of truth of your being, that they become inserted into the layers of enlightenment that are developing upon the person. And it's very, very important for a person to understand that these layers of enlightenment are like layers of muscle tissue that are on your arms and your legs and your face and your neck and your head and your back and your quads and your calves. Layers of truth actuate layers of enlightenment. Layers of enlightenment are the new body of the Kundalini energy that we're living inside right now. It's very, very important to keep your commitments, even if it's hard. If you have made a commitment that says that you will do this practice and you will do it for the rest of your life, well, hello! Your Kundalini just heard that. And if you've said it more than once, say you've said it as a mantra, or you said it as a continuing statement throughout your life, even if it's not something that you're saying because, say, a teacher told you to say it, or a sacred book told you to say it, or society told you to say it, even if it's something you've just been saying to yourself, that is a commitment. That is a commitment of truth that your Kundalini is listening to and hearing you. It's hearing you. It's feeling you. It knows the level of commitment that you have put into this. And it has a direct effect upon your energetic layering and the levels of enlightenment and Kundalini that are going to come to you. You don't want to put your ego in charge of your commitments. You don't want to put external entities in charge of your commitments. You don't want to let fear control your commitments. You don't want to let confusion or anxiety or sleep deprivation or, any of the, anger, sadness. You don't want to let those infect the commitments that you're making to Kundalini. And Kundalini encompasses pretty much all of the commitments you make in your life. You must be constantly aware that the Kundalini is constantly within you, constantly working with you, constantly hearing you and guiding you and teaching you, providing for you. And yes, if you're feeling sad, and yes, if you're feeling anxious and angry or frightened, there are reasons for that. These are perfect opportunities for you to go right to your Kundalini and find out what the lesson is. Truth and honesty and integrity are the most important factors in your Kundalini awakening experience, and you must adhere to them. And I don't care if it goes outside of societal agreement. As I've said before, many of the teachings that I'm given to give to people step far outside of what is appropriate for society. And so let's say if I give you, a teaching that steps far outside the appropriateness of society, and you decide one day that chrism is just an idiot and he's not going to follow him anymore, and you decide to abrogate that agreement between myself, yourself, and your Kundalini and my Kundalini, not a lot of good is going to come from that. Not a lot of good is going to. I have to say that almost all of my teachings will fall outside of some level of societal acceptability in the world. I get a lot of heat from people in India because, I'm divulging, and, it's really interesting. They feel that I'm divulging sacred information that only exists within their sacred books and their sacred practices that they've held, silent and secret for centuries, thousands of years. And here this American, and worse yet, this Californian American is spilling the beans on the internet. Oh my God, OMG. And so I get threats from them, and I get a lot of hate mail from them because they think that I have somehow once been a practitioner of their belief system, and now I've just I have abrogated all of the agreements that they think that I have made, because they cannot envision that the Kundalini itself would give me this information without me ever having practiced that religion or studied that technique or that system. Kundalini controls the expression of your truth, but it adheres to its own commitment within you. You don't just get to throw away the book when you've made agreements that are written in that book and you've repeated those agreements over and over and over. Those agreements they stand fast. Now, if the Kundalini, say, expands those agreements, those truths within you, well, then, of course, the Kundalini will, the dominant position. But you must be sure that it is of the Kundalini and not something else that may be plugging in, trying to make you think it's the Kundalini. Truth is a very, very big building that at the same time is visible and yet not visible all the time. Because we have the ego that we have to move through, and we have the attachments to the ego that we have to move through, and we have desires, and we have emotions that correspond with our desires that get in the way to cause us a form of truth blindness. The Kundalini cuts through a lot of that, and it allows you to see the truth for what it is, but that's not always the truth that your ego's happy with. And at the same time, you still must adhere to that truth. And what the Kundalini is often telling people is that even though your ego doesn't agree with the certain truths that you've committed yourself to, those truths are still intact, and you must work within the parameters of truth. You must keep those commitments. You must keep those understandings. You must keep those comprehensions and apply them into your current Kundalini awakening platform. And the Kundalini is very, very expansive, and so of course a person can do that. A person can bring those levels of commitment, those levels of agreement, those levels of comprehension into a greater context. But not if that is, say at the expense of the actual agreement that you've made. If you've agreed to if person A has agreed to person B that they're never going to tell about a certain technique or a certain understanding, that it remains sacred within them and strongly sacred within them, well, that's not a commitment that's going to be, that is okay to corrupt because person A has grown tired of person B. That is not with integrity. That is not with honesty. That is a direct abrogation of truth within your Kundalini person. And it's very important for people to understand this. It's very important for you to be very astute about what agreements that you make. Agreements carry karma with them. Good karma, bad karma, but they carry karma with them, and the potential for massive infusions of karma, depending on whether or not those agreements are kept, those comprehensions are understood, and that truth is revered. You want to really understand this. Kundalini is all about truth. It is the truth of our divine nature, and so, within our divine nature, which encompasses our physical natures, our emotional natures, our psychological natures, our mental natures. The Kundalini encompasses these natures, and so truth becomes a commitment for all of the human expression, not just parts of it, and not just parts that the ego are happy with. As I mentioned before, a lot of my teachings go beyond what is acceptable by the different societies of this world. And I'm not allowed to just stop doing them because somebody's got a problem with it all of a sudden. Kundalini doesn't really conform itself to the politically correct contemporary societal ideology of how it wants to bring itself into expression in this world in any specific individual. Does it the way it wants to, and it will guide its teachers to do it the way it wants to do it, regardless of their social standing or social position. And it includes, once again, all the 5 bodies of human expression. The physical and everything that has to do with the physical. The circulatory system, the respiratory system, the anatomical system, the skeletal system, the muscular system, the neural systems. Everything from the tactility of your skin to the reproductive organs, to the organs of speech and hearing. Kundalini encompasses all of the physical and also all of the mental. How you feel about yourself, how you think about others, how are you able to follow logic, how are you able to go into creative functions, how you're able to use your senses to say have a depth of perception or a depth of tactility, or how you're able to figure out how to do arithmetic or play a musical instrument, things of this nature. And it'll also incorporate itself into the emotional. How do you feel about playing that musical instrument? How do you feel about what it is you're seeing, hearing, touching, feeling, tasting, smelling? How do you feel about these things? And it will come into the emotional system, and it will begin to augment those. And within all of these augmentations, it will be guiding the person towards honesty, truth, integrity, and the balance and the manifestation of that in their lives. And when I say balance, I mean, okay, I am let's say I am the Aborigine in the Amazon rainforest right now. Okay, and I know that I have to hunt, and I know that I have to find food, and I know that I have to honor the plants. I know that I feel all the different varieties of psychological, emotional, mental input from the jungle. I know how to not step on that poisonous snake. I know how to do these things, and I must honor the Kundalini in me as it guides me through the jungle, where it wants me to go, and what it wants me to eat. It's kind of like you and I walking through a supermarket, except it's a lot fresher, far more sushi than we could ever have. So it's very, very important that you find the balance that the Kundalini is pushing you towards within the truth of your society, but even outside of the truth of your society. In the United States, we're a very, very diverse population, and one of the founding themes of the United States was to have religious freedom. And so we have this level of religious freedom. You can be a Hare Krishna here. You can be a Christian here. You can be a Muslim here. You can be Zoroastrian here. You can be Mormon. You can be a Mennonite. You can be Jewish. You can be Hindu. Even Sanatana. You can do pretty much any religion you want. You can create a religion. If you want to create a religion here, you can do that too. Okay, but that is the goal, and yet the actuality of the United States is it's founded on Christianity, and a Mason-based type of Christianity. Mason meaning the Masonics, that heavily influenced the forming of this country and basically the forming of the society as well. As they, the Masonic people didn't just disappear. They continued to grow into society. And so here in the United States we have the overriding, say, Christian culture, and many, many, many subcultures under that aren't necessarily Christian. So we on our money we have things like "In God We Trust." Well, maybe you're a shaman and you're looking at that and you're kind of seeing, what are they trusting in dogs? Because that's God spelled backwards, right? And the mind doesn't necessarily differentiate forward and backwards if you haven't been trained to do that. So truth can be very, very, very specific to a society, but with Kundalini it will reach around those specifics. And it will give to that individual having the Kundalini specific levels of truth that are far beyond what is approachable and acceptable by the overriding culture of any given society. And so how do you, as a Kundalini person, handle that? What if it goes directly against the dominant religious culture within the country that you live in or the society that you live in? How do you deal with that? And in some cases in this world, if you go against the religious culture that controls that society, you're dead. Life is over. In some places, they'll bury you to your shoulders in dirt with your hands tied behind your back, and they'll throw heavy rocks at your head. Because you dared to honor a truth that not everybody else understood. And in the West, in the United States, they do the same thing. They just do it a different way. So you have to understand that the Kundalini, and I mean straight up Kundalini, the base of the spine to the top of the head, or the top of the head to the base of the spine, I mean the Kundalini, not entities. I've spoken a lot about entities in these radio programs, and they will try to hijack you, and you got to be very, very clear. And so, there's a level of forgiveness that is involved with the early awakening person, because sometimes they don't know if they're being hijacked by an entity. They may want to. A person may study under a teacher for a while, and then, they get hijacked by an entity, and they don't know it yet because the entity is feeding them beautiful, beautiful visions of highly, complex spiritual understandings, and they don't realize. They think it's the Kundalini. And they begin to abrogate all of their agreements that they've had to a specific teacher. Yes, indeed, I've had this happen to me over and over and over. Because people are not astute or aware enough to understand that just because it's good doesn't mean it's all the Kundalini. Just because it's a pretty picture doesn't mean that the artist of that pretty picture has integrity, honesty, truth imbued within their relationship with that person. It's so important. And within these expressions of truth and the expressions of integrity and honesty, you have to keep your commitments. It's like those thin film, thin sheets of plastic that you put over your cell phone or your computer screen, or like an iPad. If you have an iPad or any kind of an electronic pad, you put that protective coat of plastic over the screen. Well, sometimes if you're doing it yourself, you get these bubbles in it, these air bubbles, and these air bubbles become trapped. Well, that's exactly what a failed commitment will do to a person's energetic anatomy. And that bubble of a lack of integrity or deceit or lying will begin to affect that person physiologically and emotionally. Think about it. That forms a blockage. And then what it's blocking develops into its own blockage. So let's just say you have a little bubble of a failed commitment. And it's there. We'll say it's in your right bicep, right? And so as that bubble is sitting there now, it's blocking energies that flow to and from the tips of the fingers into the energetics outside of the fingers, the fingertip chakras and things of that nature. And as it blocks those energies, that blockage grows and it widens, et cetera, and so forth. You can kind of see, I hope you can see where I'm going with this, because it's very, very true. Oh, let's see here. I've been streaming my consciousness, so I haven't followed what's going on in the group there in this. Okay. I see. Any bubbles? So it's very important for people to understand these amazing levels of complexity when it comes to truth, and when it comes to integrity, when it comes to the honesty. Be very careful of the commitments that you make, and who you commit to and why. If your Kundalini has led you to a very specific source of information, and it's compelling you to make that commitment to that source of information, even as you receive that information and you've made that commitment and you're probably repeating that commitment, you must keep that commitment for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean that you keep the same source of information for the rest of your life. It means you keep those commitments for the rest of your life, or the rest of the life of the scenario. And that scenario means that if you said, I will never ever, say this or that about this or that, well, then that means never ever. Never ever are the operating words right there. And this is what the Kundalini is looking at. Oh, she made that. Okay, she said, never ever will I speak of these things. Well then, okay. That is her commitment. This is where we will look to see if there is a karmic break in his or her level of integrity, his or her levels of honesty as she makes that commitment. Be very strong in your truth, because the Kundalini will amplify that truth. And if you break that truth, Kundalini will amplify that breakage as well. Very, 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 very important, these concepts that I'm talking about right now, because what they have the ability to change a person's life. And Vincent is asking, what if you've made agreements based upon entity interaction based in fear? Can you forgive those and are good? Well, if you've made agreements with entities that are based in fear, was that a commitment that was also based in truth? Was the entity telling you a lie to begin with, and so therefore you're asking, did you commit yourself to a lie? Well, if you've committed yourself to a lie, then that is not the truth, and so therefore you have not committed yourself to the truth. It can get complex here, because a lot of us don't even know that we have embedded entities controlling us right now. And Vincent continues, he says, the entity told me, do you surrender? And if it isn't the Kundalini, and I kind of made this caveat a while back, if it's not of the Kundalini, then it is not of truth. And if it's not of truth, then it is not something that is binding you. Okay, it's not something that is binding you. And I don't care what the entity says after that. You know, the entities will typically, they'll try to make a person think that they're God. I am God. And you hear this booming voice inside your head, and nobody's speaking, but you hear this booming voice inside your head. I am God, and you will obey me in all things. And because you're maybe new in the Kundalini and you've never heard of telepathic communication before, so this is new, and the entity's taking advantage of that, and well, you will definitely say, I obey you, God, and I will do anything that you tell me to do. And, you know, and there you go, right off to the psych ward. So, yeah, you're not bound by this. You must discern that it's Kundalini sent. Kundalini is truth. The exogenous factors, or the outside factors that will try to trick you into thinking that they're Kundalini, these you do not need to commit to. These do, and if you're inside of a false commitment that you know is false and that you have received no goodness from, and that, you know, it is a lie, well, you don't need to commit yourself to a lie, because that's just not truthful. That is dishonest. But if the Kundalini has led you to a book, and the Kundalini says, I want you to read this book, and this book has certain prayers in it that you feel, and the Kundalini will resonate with you. You'll feel the resonance of the Kundalini within you. And you say those prayers and make those commitments. And these would be commitments to God, or commitments to the Kundalini itself in some form or another. You must hold those commitments. A lot of this is the person's ability to discern what is Kundalini and what isn't. And if you follow the safety protocols, which I really, really strongly suggest any of you to do, and if you go to KundaliniAwakeningSystems1.com and you look at that's the number 1.com, and if you look at the left margin there, and the fifth one down is the safeties, and the safeties will guide you. They will guide you in a way of merging and melding yourself into Kundalini consciousness and awareness. And it makes it much, much easier for a person to discern the truth from the lie that is given outside of the five body awareness systems, outside of the veil, that can have a direct effect upon the five body system. It's like if you look at the early modern photographs of the exploration of the human brain, well, you know, they would stimulate the brain with an electrode, and that would bring up a certain memory, or it would bring up a certain sense, like smell, or you know, a person would see a certain thing, or they would be stimulated by that electricity, that fine jolt of electricity, to see or feel or have a certain kind of a memory. Well, it's the same thing that the entities do, except they do it with far more of an intention, far more of a pattern that they want to develop in the person. And so, as Vincent was saying, you know, the entities will often say, "Do you surrender?" And of course, you might say yes, because you don't know better. You don't know any better than to say yes, and you're just going to play it safe and say yes. Well, that is not an agreement made in truth. Truth from you, but a lie from the entity. So basically, you've made an agreement with nothing of consequence, because it was a lie. It was that which the Kundalini is steering you away from. It steers you away from lying. It steers you away from stealing. It steers you away from the common corruptions that are occurring within an entity and an individual contact. So those agreements are null and void even as you make them. And, this is made a lot. I'm so really thankful for Vincent for asking that question. People don't know that the entities are all over them, all over society. Walking in the mall. They're all over the place in the mall. They're all over the place on the streets, especially in crowded, congested city centers. Even here in Santa Rosa, California, you've got 2 malls here. And so, you walk through those malls and you're just festooned with entities. And they're not just on the ground. They're not all bipedal. They're flying around too. But you don't need to see this. And the Kundalini will not always let you see this. It will not always let you see this because it knows the negative impact that it would have on you. And you need to gain a certain level of understanding before you can see these things. And even if that has been pushed, say the person is like, taking a bunch of hallucinogens and trying to do the third eye opening, which so many people in India are really after right now. You open the third eye prematurely and wow, what you see and what happens to you within the agreements that are made by you simply viewing an entity, a discarnate entity. Well, those agreements, those are true agreements because you're truthfully seeing them, and because of the truth of that visual, they're truthfully seeing you, and that is a truth, and that is not to be abrogated. Now, you can shut it down in certain ways, but you'll always have that memory. You'll always have that memory, and so it's very, very, very important for you to do your best. If you're listening to this broadcast, if you're listening to this information right now, go to the website, copy the safety protocols on a piece of paper, and read them to yourself and practice those protocols. Do not allow yourself to wander around blindly following, this new age thing or that religious thing or that scientific thing or that societal thing. Just go straight to the source. The Kundalini wrote those safeties. They wrote them, and they wrote them for you. It's very important for you to understand the levels of truth, honesty, and integrity that are imbued within a person who is activated by Kundalini and awakened by Kundalini, but also those who are attracted to the activation. For those of you who want to come into the Kundalini, that feel they're being called into the Kundalini, you may be having out-of-body experiences right now, which are very much a precursor event to having activated Kundalini, and then from activated to awakened Kundalini. And this is happening more and more and more in the populations right now, with the internet, with television, with movies, Hollywood, and the different people are very attracted to a lot of the phenomena that the Kundalini can bring, but it doesn't just come with phenomena. Expanded levels of wisdom are also a very, very strong and common gift of phenomena to an individual having the Kundalini. And as you feel these wisdoms coming to you, and as you feel these wisdoms beginning to take control of your life, you are indeed making an agreement with the Kundalini that you must keep. That you must keep. And as I've said in other programs, the Kundalini doesn't leave you just because your corporeal body has passed away. It follows you after death. It is a permanent part of your soul anatomy forever and ever. And so that commitment that you've made as you've awakened your Kundalini here on this world, and as you pass into the next world, that Kundalini is with you. That divine imprint is with you upon your soul. And if you incarnate again, and many of you will, when you incarnate again, that Kundalini will also incarnate with you. You'll always have it. You won't always know what it is, though. I mean, you still, if you incarnate again, you still have to make that agreement to go through the veil of forgetfulness so that you can meet your karma honesty, with honesty and with integrity, and through direct experience. All right. I would like to welcome Santara, Eileen, Aharina, Brooke, and it looks like Rosemary, as well as everybody in the chat room. Hello, everybody there. If you have any questions or you want to call in, the call-in number is area code 347. That's a New York area code, 347-934-0026. Feel free to call in. Her Holiness Santara will pick up the phone and she will put you in line. And if you have any question whatsoever and you're on the chat room, my eyes are open now, able to read what you're writing. Okay. Integrity. Do you mean what you say? Do you say what you mean? Have you made an agreement with your Kundalini that says, I will do this, this, or that. I will follow truth. I will follow love. I will follow forgiveness. Well, are you forgiving? Are you loving? And are you truthful? At all times. How much of your day is involved with being truthful, with being loving, with having integrity? And because the Kundalini is inside you and within you all the time, what little slip up do you think that she's okay with? When you walk away from a restaurant table, do you leave a tip? If it's that kind of a restaurant where that waitress or waiter, that's helping to them to live their life and to meet their karma and to add their very, very special imprintation upon this world and the vibratory energies of this world. Do you leave them a tip or do you stiff them? And is it okay with you, and why? Is it okay for you to not notice that homeless person sitting on the side of the road? Is it okay? Is that all right? Can you bless a penny and give it to them, whether they take it or not? Can you feed a senior citizen that's in line behind you? Just buy their meal. And tell the person that's taken the order not to tell them who did it. Let them trust in the providence of humanity. Where do you think you're allowed to slip up? Well, let me tell you, you can slip up in some of these areas because of entity infestation. If you're still listening to the entities, if you're not practicing the safeties and you're not doing your discernments, the entities can corrupt you in some way. And those mistakes are allowed. You're allowed to make mistakes. You just want to self-correct. You don't want to make the same mistakes over and over and over. And this leads us right into integrity. Do you have integrity? Do you have a relationship that has integrity with your Kundalini? Regardless of the amount of entities that are surrounding you, regardless of your marital status, regardless of the problems that may be besieging you, your work is failing you. You have to start looking for another job. Your marriage is failing. You have to start dividing up your assets. The many different things that are happening to a person that are difficult and mind-consuming. Well, does that impact the integrity that you have made with your Kundalini? Because it will be tested and it will be challenged. Our society is all about that challenge. Our societies are run off of the ego. One of the things that the ego is really big on is the want of gain, the fear of loss and the want of gain. And a lot of people have fear of loss, but want of gain is a very big deal here too. And how much of that want of gain do you allow your Kundalini to control? How much of another person are you willing to sacrifice in order to place yourself ahead of them? Ask yourself that question. How much of another person are you willing to just shred in the social environment just so that you can place yourself ahead of them? How many heads do you cut off so that you can make it to wherever you consider the top to be? And what happens to you when you do this and you have the awakened or activated Kundalini? What do you think is going to occur in real time in your life, this life, as you live and breathe right now? You see, a lot of the Kundalini experience is about meeting that karma in this lifetime. And that includes the karma you're making in this lifetime, because that karma has to leave. That karma has to be, has to exit the spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, and psychological bodies of the human being as the enlightenment is layered and layered and layered upon the individual. So you get to have the ramification of the choices that you make. And if the choices you make are of the ego valuations of fear of loss and want of gain, and you start stepping on people or cutting people's heads off just because you might have a disagreement with them or you want what they have, you're going to live that karma. You know, I traveled to Bosnia and Croatia, and I learned the truth of the Balkan Wars when I went down there. I talked to people on both sides of the street with that, Christians and Muslims, and it basically it boiled down to the Croatians wanted the land that Bosnia is, and they decided that they were going to just take it by force. They just wanted the land. Okay, and so they killed, a staggering amount of people in order to take the land. And I visited these people, and in society, in Croatian society, as you drive around, you feel the resonance and the karmic imprint on people, because the Kundalini allows you to feel these things. And for the people that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s, they're amazingly different from their offspring. Their offspring are very, very, youthful, free, vital, very much, your stereotypical teenagers, children, 20-year-olds, maybe, early 30s. But the people older than that, the people that took part of that war, are very, very, very different. They're very angry. They're very upset. They're very antisocial. They're very malignant in many different ways. Not all of them, of course. I'm not going to lump the entire society, but for those that I met that you could clearly see were part of that decision-making of that population at that time, in the late 1980s and early 1990s. I think it ended in 1993. Very big, different karmic imprint. Huge. And for a Kundalini person, you're feeling that. You feel that full on, and you're kind of blown away by it. Both Magdalene and I, we were just like, "Oh, whoa, what was that?" And it just goes on and on as you go into these amazing, fresh war zone areas. Like this is going to be happening in the Syria conflict right now. You're going to feel these vibrations of very, very low, hurtful karmic vibrations coming off of some of the people that are participating in this, especially 20 years from now when it may be over. There's peace in the land, but they still carry that imprint as they go through that land, as they go through their life. This is what you want to look at when you're looking at the truth of Kundalini. It sticks with you. I encourage you to make your agreements. Make really, really good, strong agreements. I encourage you to do that. But be very, very discerning about what the agreement is that you make. If you're giving yourself to the Kundalini, or if you're giving yourself to the Kundalini and the teacher, as happens with me a lot, well, then in that case, you're just giving yourself to the Kundalini. Because if it's a teacher that's teaching the Kundalini, well, it's the Kundalini. It's not some corporeal guy going, oh, yeah, I like to drink, milkshakes, with my Gatorade. And, it's not that. Not that at all. It's the Kundalini. You're making a commitment with your Kundalini. And if she, meaning the sacred feminine, has led you to a certain place, a certain person, a certain time, a certain country, a certain social atmosphere, a certain political atmosphere, if she has led you there, and you go and you make that commitment, then you must hold on to that commitment until she guides you somewhere else. And that means the sacred feminine. That doesn't mean entities. Once again, entities will always try to slip in corruptive tentacles into your equation. And, frankly, to help you out a little bit with entities, they are multipeds. Many of them, most of them actually are. They're kind of gaseous in some ways, but they'll like sit on your head. It'll look like you're wearing an octopus hat, and they'll have tentacles going into your eyes, into both nostrils, into your mouth, into both ears, and also plugging in to the back of your neck where the spine meets into the skull right under the occipital lobe. I don't know what that's called. And they'll be pushing information into you. They'll be pushing corruption into you. They'll be pushing specific levels of emotion into you. And so you take your hands and you close your fingers and you run them over the top of your head. You do that about 3 times. And that will clear them off, at least temporarily. But you'll be able to feel it settling down again. And again and again. I mean, if you can do it without disrupting yourself, try not to do it while you're driving. Pull over and clear your head a little bit. And you will feel the actual level of informational corruption leaving your thought processes. Do this all the time. You can feel them plugging into your arm. You can feel them plugging into your back. You can feel them plugging into your face or your eyes or like I said, the top of your head. And you can just unplug them. And that's taking a proactive stance of purification. And your Kundalini sees this and feels this and knows that you are taking you have made a choice. You are now taking a proactive stance at being a pure vessel for the divine energy and experience to come through. And so she will help you build that pure platform, that temple of grace within you. As you constantly set about to purify your thoughts, purify your emotions, purify your truth, purify your intentions, purify the agreements that you make, live that honest life within the context of Kundalini, well, that great, great temple of light, temple of grace, will be built within you, and you will hold that divine grace within you, and you will be as a saint upon this world. This is part of the deal. Part of the deal. I'm going to invite Rose. Actually, I'm going to invite Santara to come back into the kitchen and from wherever she is. She's probably cleaning or something. Are you there? Hello? Hello?
I'm here. I'm here.
How are you doing, my dear?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm trying to everything is just thinking of.
Oh, I'm losing your voice, hon. I'm losing you.
Oh, okay. Let me do a test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Do you have any announcements that you'd like to make?
Sure. I will make an announcement where people can go to make a donation to Kundalini Awakening System and to support the work that chrism does. you can go to www.ascension-kundalini.blogspot.com. And on the upper right-hand corner, you will see that donate button. There is another blog spot you can go to that's a little bit easier to remember. It's chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com. And again, there is a donate button there. I think that one is on the left-hand side, but it does the same thing. So if you're in a position to make a donation, that would be very gratefully received. It certainly helps. So thank you very much. And that's the only announcement I have at this time, chrism.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you very much. Put you into the Shiva Blue. And I'm going to come on over to Rosemary here. Hello, Rosemary. Do you have any announcements?
Yes, I do, chrism. Thank you for asking. First announcement is to local Minnesotans listening that I still have some opportunities to show the film, the Kundalini film. That's a documentary and very helpful, as people tell me, as I know myself also. And all of that is in preparation for the seminar here in Minnesota, November 14th and 15th at the Best Western, where we have been the last two times, and they know us, and they're happy to have us there. It is, again, November 14th and 15th. More information from me readily available just by calling 651-452-3161 or 651-329-9615. And I'd be delighted to share with you more about that seminar. And chrism will be here the week before giving some talks around the cities and maybe a little further too this time. So for those in town, it's something to look forward to. Thank you, chrism.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. Thank you very much. And so here, now Vincent is asking me, say, well, what if entities are infesting your thought process, as they do, and you answer your thought but are unknowingly talking to an entity? Well, this is this ties right into the safety protocols. If the thought is in any way angry or pushy, or if you ask it, if it's the Kundalini and it says yes, but it says something to you that's like, go molest that person, or, oh, you must do this or this or that, and it doesn't tie in with the safety protocols. You're not showing love, compassion, tolerance, honesty, truth, okay, discipline. You're not doing a service of some sort. You may be infested by that entity if they're real sly, and some of them are, and they know the safeties, and so they'll try to infest you or possess you along the lines of the safeties. But eventually they're going to screw up. They always do. And once they screw up, then you're free. Then you're free, because and you just refuse to answer that thought stream at all. And unless if you are thinking to yourself and you go, well, I think such and such, I think that color of that sign there is really pretty and blah, blah, blah. And if you're going to ask your Kundalini a question, you always phrase it, my Kundalini in me, my Kundalini, should I help that person on the side of the road? Or, should I apply for that specific job? And based upon the answer that you receive, if it feels, it will have a very certain quality to it that will immediately feel trustworthy to you. You'll get a warmth in your chest, or you'll get a vibration in your spine, or a tingly sensation in your tailbone. You might even have tingles just kind of going up your spine. Many, many different phenomena. You can trust that more. But a lot of this is really, the Kundalini is teaching you how to discern an entity from itself. And in many ways, it can be a very, very subtle discernment, especially in the beginning. Especially in the beginning, when you haven't really thought about, having your mind hijacked by an external consciousness. And so you don't really know that, oh my gosh, I just always thought it was the way my hair was laying on my head. I didn't realize there was a squid or an octopus or something sitting on my head trying to control me. And this is very, very, very true. And so you're learning to discern. You're having mindfulness about what quality of thought you're having and why you're having that thought. And it's very important for you to practice this and to really, really, in real life, go through your life and think about the source of the thought that you're having. Think about the source of the thought that you're having and learn how to control your thoughts, which will lead you to learn how to control your feelings so that you're not having some entity begin to manipulate your emotional body and give you feelings that are not yours. So you're being trained to have the mindfulness to know and to control how you are, where you are, when you are, why you are thinking anything. And the Kundalini should always be paramount in your mind. The truth of the goddess, the truth of love, the truth of honesty, the truth of service, the truth of tolerance, the truth of patience, the truth of your commitments, the truth of your integrity. These are the barometers of entity infestation, of egoic, the control of the ego. These qualities that you should be expressing all the time are the barometers of where you are within your Kundalini and where you are within an entity controlling your Kundalini or controlling your choices, or your own ego controlling your choices. Remember, fear of loss and want of gain is basically the catchphrase for ego control. So if you're fearing a loss of something, you're fearing a loss of a material or money or whatever, that's of the ego. If you're wanting gain, if you're wanting to cut off somebody else, to hurt somebody else in order for you to have personal gain, well, that's of the ego as well. And the entities will try to tie in to the fear of loss and want of gain aspect of your equation. And so you have to be very, very, very astute about how you think, what you think. How you think, what you think. And basically, if your ego or the entities are infecting the ego, you're going to make a lot of wrong choices. You're going to develop a lot of karmic bubbles within your energetic anatomy. And I want you to really begin to take charge of this. You can meet a lot of karma by doing the practice of the safeties. You can meet a lot of it by being charitable and being service-oriented and helping other people. Perhaps helping other people in a way that is diametrically opposed to how you may have committed a karmic offense in the first place. If you're working with a teacher or you're working with a sacred organization or a sacred book or whatever it is, and the teachings, you're no longer participating in those teachings, but you still keep them sacred. You keep them silent. Well, you're still within your integrity. You're still within your honesty. You're still within your truth. I take a lot of chances teaching people the way. I get death threats because I follow the Kundalini and I allow myself to be put out there, and I commit teachings that are very, 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 very taboo oriented or restrictive by the dominant cultures and societies in this world. And if you all of a sudden grow tired of chrism as a teacher, and then you start, shouting and screaming out, "Oh my God, he had me do this and he had me do that." Well, that is such a lack of honesty, a lack of integrity. You agreed to do all of these things. You're never forced to do that. You're never coerced into doing anything. You make specific agreements. And if you decide to go on your own for whatever reason, and you start, it doesn't obliterate your agreements. It doesn't obliterate your integrity. You do that by letting your ego take over. By being so open and so available to people in this world, I'm allowed to help many, many, many people in this world go through this process. And as I've mentioned before, this process is only going to be increasing in the populations. It's not going to decrease. It's going to increase. And people need to be able to stay out of the psych ward. They need to be able to stay out of fear. They need to be able to stay within strong levels of truth, productivity, happiness, joy, bliss, grace. They don't need to be saddled with somebody else's ego opinion because they decided to fall off the trail. They decided to take a diversion, around the mountain instead of going up the mountain. They decided to go into ego aggrandizement. And as I've said, this happens to me all the time. I just haven't spoken of it so directly before. Well, I'm speaking directly of it now. Everything you're hearing on any of these radio shows is sacred information. I haven't asked you for a commitment, not even one time have I asked you for a commitment to keep it sacred to yourself, to not share it with other people. I share all these teachings. This is a public radio station. This goes out to anybody and everybody who can come in and listen. But some teachings aren't that way. Some teachings must remain private for the safety of the individual. And if you abrogate those teachings, well, then the safety of an individual goes right out the window, and that's your karma, ladies and gentlemen. That's your karma. And that can be a heavy burden. So there you have it. There you have it. The Kundalini will make you feel like you're breaking, like your heart is breaking when you do something of a dishonest nature. When you're not doing something that is virtuous within the understandings of what Kundalini considers virtuous to mean. And so all of a sudden you might steal something. Let's just say you steal something. Or let's say you sacrifice somebody's career in order to use them as a stepping stone for your own. Ouch. That will register as a very, very strong breaking of the heart. Extremely strong. Typically, a Kundalini person wouldn't do that, but if their ego is controlling them, or there are entities that are controlling their ego, which begins to take control of their choices, that can happen. And oh my word, that is so painful. It's worse than a cardiac arrest. And it lasts, and it lasts, and it lasts, and it lasts for days and days and weeks. And then whenever you feel that you're in this position because you stepped on Johnny Jones there, the pain comes right back. Comes right back at you. And you've changed Johnny Jones's life because you sacrificed him for your own ego aggrandizement. This happens a lot in our society. This happens a lot. People do these things to each other all the time. That is how the karma is made, and that's why a person keeps coming back over and over and over and over and over again to work out those types of things, to work out those levels of karma. Every second, every minute of your life, you have the opportunity to do something good or to do something bad. And I'm going to suggest that you do something good. And, there are going to be a lot of people saying, well, there is no goodness, there is no badness. Well, I got news for you. We are in these types of bodies so that we can discern different levels of comprehension. And some of those comprehensions deal with being of loving service or being not of a loving service. and being of a loving, helpful individual. And you don't have to be Kundalini active to be this way. Being of a loving, helpful individual is so much better. Oh my God, so much better than being a hurtful, deceitful, lying, cheating, hateful individual. Seriously so. Seriously so. Okay. I would like to bring Her Holiness Santara Kundalini back on here.
Hi, chrism. I'm back.
Hey, good to see you. Hear you. Good to hear you. I see you too. I see you in the red. You're in the red. Looks like Atlanta Seeker's typing. Atlanta Seeker's typing something. So I will answer her question if she has one when she finishes typing. But I'd like you to
Okay.
Do you have any questions, my dear?
I do have a few questions from the group. There's one or two private questions as well. Do you want me to ask you one now while that's... Okay.
Yeah, let's take the private one.
Just wondering if you would ask chrism a question for me. The question is, when I am having an OBE, an out-of-body experience, or in my everyday life, and I see a vision of Jesus or angels, etc., how will I know it is truly them and not an entity posing to be them?
Well, a lot of it will depend on what your Kundalini tells you about that event. I have seen Jesus, have seen angels. I've met angels. I've seriously interacted with angels, and they are not what we think at all. And they are not what the Bible or any other sacred book teaches them. And they, it's very, very, very different. And yet it's a real deal. If you're seeing angels and you're seeing Jesus within the context of the Kundalini, that is a tremendously positive sign. Because if you look at what Jesus taught, Jesus was teaching people how to have Kundalini, whether or not they had Kundalini or not. He was teaching love. He was teaching forgiveness. He was teaching turn the other cheek. He was teaching the manifestations of grace upon an individual, and he was teaching them how to hold it and honor it and live that teaching. So if you're seeing Christ, you're basically seeing a person that was practicing the safeties in an exalted form. And you could trust what that is saying to you. And if you're seeing an angel, same thing. An angel is a representation of a person that is having the Kundalini taking flight, the spirit taking flight. Kundalini people even, develop a physiological sensation of having wings. You'll feel these little bumps on your shoulder blades, and they'll start to grow and grow and grow. And then after, a few months' time, you'll feel wings on your back. And seriously, you'll feel these things on your back. And this is how you know. This is just how you know. So if a person is seeing that in the OBE state, I think that is a teaching that is driving them forward into their Kundalini, forward into honesty, forward into truth, forward into love, and into service. Christ was a very service-oriented individual. Very, very positive event in a person's life. And so I would suggest that person thank the Kundalini and thank Christ for his appearance in their life, and to thank those angels as well. Gratitude is a big deal inside of the Kundalini awakening. Gratitude to grace, gratitude to the divine. And it's this gratitude that can really help you stay within your integrity, stay within the honesty of your commitments, and stay within the honesty of your trust and surrender to the divine. Now, let's see. Atlanta Seekers is asking a question here. Let me bring it over here. If you are receiving death threats, that is an evil entity. I don't think someone who is sincerely on a spiritual path would do that, even if they think that you should not be. Well, you know what? I mean, this is absolutely true. I don't disagree with you at all. Atlanta Seekers sharing some of this information with the general public. A great film about Jesus' secret Kundalini teaching, and she gives me a link to that. That is an evil entity. And this world is full of evil entities. And, this in many ways, the parts of this world are hell realms. Syria right now is a hell realm. Okay? So there are evil entities here. And evil entities can sometimes do what they can do. And they can turn people away from the truth. They can cause people to shoot up a movie theater, or they can cause people to shoot up a school. Whether that, whatever that person is connected to, or whatever the individuals, or organizations that are, that these people are connected to, doesn't matter. It is being done. People are dying. People are dying. So this stuff does happen on this world. And don't think that just because I'm telling the truth that I'm not allowed to have harm caused to me. Or that if you start telling the truth, that you will not have harm come to you. It's a risky business, folks. It's a risky business. Now let me scroll up here a little bit more, Amelia. Yeah, okay. Next question, my dear.
Okay. I would like you to ask chrism why Kundalini rising is so feared if it is bringing us to enlightenment.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's because our society does not recognize it. It does not teach us about it. And so as it comes up to us, we're sent directly to the hospital, which typically will send us directly to the psych ward, where we will be imprisoned both physically and chemically for a period of time. And that chemical impairment can cause us to go into great levels of inner turmoil and fear, and as the person is having the Kundalini and trying to resist the Kundalini at the same time because they don't know about it, they don't trust it, and they just want it to be gone. They think they're deranged. They think they're bipolar. They think they have schizophrenia. They begin to really, their life begins to shatter around them. They can no longer work. They can no longer drive. They can no longer take care of themselves. And the chemicals on top of that make it even harder. So in our world, in the Western world especially, and even in India, where the word, the Sanskrit word, comes from the Sanskriti people, that's a dead society now, but that's modern Hinduism sprang from that. Even in India right now, they have no clear understanding about Kundalini. They get lost in their religious belief systems, or expectations from praying to this god, praying to the sacred feminine, and then going out and raping a woman on a bus in the same day. Think about it. So even in societies that are a little bit more enlightened than others, there's not a clear understanding or a willingness to understand or to move above the animalistic nature of the law of the jungle. They're not willing to move beyond that. And the people that have the Kundalini inside that, wow, it's like being dropped in the middle of the ocean, a stormy sea. It can be rough at first. It can be very, very difficult. It was for me too. So that's the Kundalini will allow that to occur simply because it must insert itself into society, and it knows that the person that it's occurring to, if they begin to really focus on the love and the grace and the beauty and the joy and the service and the honesty and the trust and the truth, they will go well. And the Kundalini will guide that individual. I got guided. I'd walk into a bookstore and I would have books fall off the shelf. Okay, I would have dreams that gave me very, very specific guidance. Sure, I was homeless for 12 years, and every day I would ask myself, is this a good day to die? But it never was, and I continued to learn, and these sacred skills would come upon me, and I was just astonished at sacred skills, that just kind of blows your mind when you experience them. And then I'd start to see entities and all this stuff within the Kundalini. Well, entities I'm used to, and some of the skills I was used to too from my childhood. But still, when you're 20 or when you're 30 years old, you think you maybe left childhood a little while ago, and so it's a great eye opener to have an expansion of what you were seeing and experiencing in childhood come to the fore when you're 30 years old, and you're kind of going, whoa, okay, I need to figure this out. Kundalini will guide you, it will coach you, and yes, it is fearful, and yes, for those who are living from the effects of fear in their life, they're doing everything. They saturate their house with antibacterial creams and cleanses, and if somebody breathes in the direction of the sink while they wash all the silverware, I mean, they become very, very manic about cleanliness in their household because they're so afraid that a bacteria or a germ or something of that nature is going to infect their silverware or whatever it is. And so, the Kundalini will help you with itself. It will give you teachings. It will guide you to teachings that are appropriate for you. It will guide the individual, but it is a scary, frightening prospect in a person's life simply because of the lack of knowledge and the lack of understanding that exists within it in our society. Over, Centauri.
Thank you, chrism. Next question. I enjoy listening most weeks, Santara, and this is my first time writing to ask a question. Would you please ask chrism, what is my soul? Is it different to my spiritual body?
Yes, it is. Your soul force is that which is engaged in meeting its karma, in stepping into the physical realm and into awakening the Kundalini. It wants to evolve, and it also wants to burn that karma. Your spiritual body is based more in the 5 bodies of expression. It's that which the soul controls. The soul controls the spiritual body, and the spiritual body is being controlled through the soul. And to do the refinement things, go to that specific church, take that specific kind of job, interact with people in this certain way. Don't interact with those people over there. Help that person over there. I mean, all the different levels of teaching that we receive intuitively from our spirit are also guided from our soul. Kundalini will come to the soul, and the soul will take a direct influence from the Kundalini, which filters down into the spiritual body, which filters down into all the other 4 bodies of the human equation. Over.
Thank you, chrism. This is from the group. I've been having a lot of strange occurrences, such as brief headaches that last 2 seconds at the center of the forehead, and strokes of luck or strange things happening around certain times, like 11:11, 4:44. Terrible pain in my back and my abdominal area. Could this be Kundalini or a mix of Kundalini and other things?
Typically Kundalini. Kundalini wants, it will show you very specific numerical patterns. 111 is a very common one. I would get straights. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like 12:34 in the afternoon or the evening, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and my gaze would be automatically locked on that clock at that time. So these are patterns of teaching that the Kundalini is sending a person, but it totally bypasses their mental processes or the ego processes or their emotional processes, and it becomes a great mystery to them, and they question it often. I get this question often. As a matter of fact, I think this is not the first time you've asked about this on these programs, Amelia. And so these patterns, these teaching patterns, they're prevalent within the Kundalini awakening and the pre-Kundalini activation. there are basically 3 stages to Kundalini, and the first one is the pre-activation state, where you're just kind of being guided to levels of practice, levels of worship, levels of interest, levels of information that push you towards the Kundalini. So you'll be looking at OBEs, or you'll be looking at tarot, or you'll be looking at mediumistic type of activities. You're probably listening to a channel or something like that. And this would commence into the activation, which is the actual Kundalini taking hold of the individual and pushing them into levels of service, pushing them into levels of experiencing phenomena, pushing them into levels of grace that are just enough to keep them going forward and forward and forward and forward until finally, boom, the spinal sweep occurs and the energy fountains down around them, and then they're in the awakened state. And from there, the teachings coalesce along the lines of actual divine intervention and divine transformation that allow the person to have and to hold the Kundalini itself for the rest of the existence of that soul, which is into infinity. And so with that, can you ask the question again? What was that?
Oh, I have to scroll. I've been having a lot of occurrences such as brief headaches that last 2 seconds in the center of the forehead, strokes of luck, or strange things happening around certain times like 11:11, 4:44, and terrible pain in the back and abdominal area. Could this be Kundalini? A mixture of Kundalini and other things?
That could definitely be Kundalini. All of those symptoms can be Kundalini. It's almost like the person is experiencing a symphony of Kundalini phenomena, but it's gentle at this point. These are not strong. So I'm going to classify them as being as just coming into the activated phase. And it's a good example, really, for everybody listening. It's a great example if you listen to that question. The numerical evaluations are coming in 111, 123, 444, things of that nature, and they're setting up a curiosity about specific patterns at the same time that the person's having lower abdominal pain, having a very fast pain in the headache, having strokes of luck when they see these numbers, and the Kundalini is really beginning to capture their attention and to bring them into levels of being able to access and integrate specific teachings and rewarding that person for identifying those patterns and experiencing them, having the thoughts, that they even were able to come into the thought that, oh, could this be the Kundalini? Yeah, to even be able to ask that question. Is it reason enough for the Kundalini to reward them as having a stroke of luck in some way? Over.
Thank you, chrism. Now, this is a long one, but I want to read it all, so I'll begin. I have been just researching information on the opening of the heart.
Just a second, my dear. Thank you and I apologize for interrupting. And then Seeker says, what is the reason you do not recommend listening to Hemisync at night? Because you fall asleep, and it's just a waste of time. Not all the time. You won't fall asleep all the time, but you'll fall asleep typically. And even Robert Monroe, who developed Hemisync, told people to do it in the daytime. So that's the reason why I do not recommend listening to the Hemisync at night. Please continue, Centaur.
Okay. I have just been researching information on the opening of the heart chakra after an experience I had just weeks before the activating of Kundalini. But my experience didn't seem to fit the descriptions of an opening. It was a very similar experience I had to the Kundalini activation in the root chakra. During meditation, my heart expanded until it burst into glorious particles which spread throughout my body, and I had a connection through the top of my head with immense feelings of love and gratitude for the divine. While researching, I came across one of Chrism's articles that discusses the Kundalini heart chakra activation. It says that the activation is different from a heart chakra orgasm, but doesn't go into much detail. I hadn't heard of either of these before this point. Would you be able to clarify whether this sounds like an activation from the heart chakra, or an opening of the heart chakra, or an orgasm of the heart chakra? Thank you very much.
The the particulation of the heart, simply, and as it went up, I mean, she didn't mention, or he didn't mention anything about the lower chakras being affected by that heart chakra experience that they had. This person is basically talking about it going from the heart and then up, and that to me is a heart. That would be kind of a heart orgasm. Yeah, that's a heart orgasm, and that can lead to an activation, though. And that can lead to an activation, and if the person is willing to go with it, it should affect the lower chakras too. It's almost all activations of the Kundalini are like check marks. It starts at the divine center of the human, which is the heart, and then a signal is sent to the base of the spine. Now, if a person has lower chakra activity or pelvic pain in the lower areas, that just means that a constant level of signal is being sent to the first chakra and is stimulating the pelvic girdle to open and the pelvic girdle to expand, and that is what can cause some of that lower back pain for an individual. And so it's like a check mark, as the heart chakra, having that very special brain that Greg Braden speaks of. Having that very special brain, as it sends that signal down to the first chakra, beginning to open the cathedral of the Kundalini at the base of the spine. Well, when that cathedral opens up enough, boom, that energy will go from the heart to the lower cathedral and straight up through the top of the head, forming this very vertical check mark. And that may be, people should be able to understand it from that standpoint. What this person had, though, I think was a heart orgasm. A heart orgasm that really can lead them into a heart activation if they work the safeties. Now, if they were to have that happen to them and then do the 5 Tibetans and to do the forgivenesses and the tolerances and the trust and sincerity and truth and make commitments to the Kundalini to do that, wow, that is an activation sequence right there in and of itself. Over.
Thank you. Next question. Do the safeties keep the kriyas from happening, the spontaneous spastic movements, or do they actually encourage it? I have done the safeties twice today. I felt a lot leaving me, actually, during the compression prayer. But then suddenly I went into a triangular head pose, my two hands together on my crown, with a rush of energy going up, I think. And so will I experience more of this through doing the safeties, I think? She's asking.
So they're asking if the safeties encourage movement from the chakras or shut them down?
Well, the first thing is, do the safeties keep the kriyas from happening, or do they actually encourage it? The person did the safeties today twice. Okay,
I got it. They will encourage. Okay. They will encourage the kriyas. I'm going to repeat that again. They will encourage kriyas. The safeties are there to encourage the Kundalini, but to encourage it along the lines that where a person can receive information and understand what is going on and support the activation and the awakening of their Kundalini within their body. It in no way does it shut them down or try to modulate them from an ego perspective or from a controlling perspective. You'll know that one of the safeties is surrender. Surrendering to the Kundalini. Surrendering is very, very important. And so, as you read the safeties again, I would suggest that person read the safeties at least 3 more times, and to really begin to take in what all the different concepts are that make up the safety protocols, and to really remember that surrendering to the Kundalini is a way of non-control over the Kundalini, allowing the Kundalini to have complete freedom as it manifests its way through the various bodies of the individual, the channels of the individual. And so it will free it up. And as a matter of fact, the practice of the safeties twice a day is really good. And I want to commend that individual for practicing them twice a day and having the triangular pose go up on the crown and having the energetics flow towards that triangular pose. Perfect. That's exactly what the Kundalini would have a person do. Matter of fact, that happens to me all the time. And I think I've seen it happen with other people. You just kind of go right into that position, and the flow goes. If the flows will follow your Kundalini's intention. Okay, the flow will follow that, and as you practice the safeties, your intention is galvanized with the Kundalini's intention. Okay, and that makes a singularity of intention, and that goes right in with what we've been talking about here. It's just like, if you're making that intention, then you're making an agreement. If you're making that agreement, then it is up to you to hold your end of the deal, and holding your end of the deal is your integrity of truth, your integrity of commitment, the honesty of your truth, and the honesty of your commitment to the Kundalini. Over.
Okay. Okay, sorry. I was just having a bit of... Okay. Oh, okay, next question. Okay. How can I tell how far my Kundalini has risen is the next question.
Wait, say again?
How can I tell how far my Kundalini has risen?
Oh, well.
I know.
Kundalini is often, it's like a thermometer. It'll if you're looking at spinal infusion, you can actually feel the Kundalini raise up to a certain chakra, and then it'll come down. Then it'll raise up to another chakra, and it'll stay there for a while. Then it might lower itself or raise itself to a higher chakra. I mean, what you can do is you can figure out how your mindset is changing, how your response to the Kundalini is changing. You can feel that, you can figure that, you can work with that and allow that to control you. As you allow that level of infusion to control you, then you can feel where you are within the Kundalini. But there's, I'm not like some of these other Kundalini teachers that form numerical valuation to levels of Kundalini. I don't think the divine is really open to being weighed and measured in such scientific ways. And I know there are a couple of teachers out there that do that, but I don't do that. And I don't do muscle testing either, just so you know. People's ego are so strong, it's like, oh gosh,
Really?
Oh yeah. Muscle testing to me is that's just to me now. Muscle testing is a waste of time. You need to trust yourself more and get your ego inquisitiveness out of the picture. But I know a lot of people like muscle testing, and so I'm not gonna say, oh, don't do that simply because chrism doesn't do it. I just don't really follow that too well. And I, all the way back to when I was doing some work with Glenn Morris. Glenn Morris was a Kundalini teacher who passed away 2000, the year after Katrina hit New Orleans. I forget when that was. But I went to one of his seminars before I was even teaching, and just to see what he had to say, and he was big on the muscle testing too, and it's a fairly vague approach, in my opinion, where the Kundalini fairly, specific about it. And so, if you really need to know where you are within the Kundalini, ask the Kundalini itself and let the Kundalini tell you in the many different voices, in the many different ways that the Kundalini will tell you. Over.
Thank you, Chrism.
Thank you.
Okay, this is from the group. Hello, group. I went through the Kundalini awakening in April of this year. Since then, I have been contacted by many beings that look human, but they speak to me in code. Since I knew from before my experience, some I knew from before my experience, and others I just met. I have also been approached by Freemasons to join them and have discovered that my adopted parents were Freemasons. Has anyone had these kinds of experiences? I have read what the Freemasons are about and have decided not to join them. I'm looking to continue my journey here on this earth, devoted to prayer, love, helping others, and God. Would you have a comment on that, chrism?
Good choice. She's making good choices. A lot of the esoteric communities will breed amongst themselves in order to bring in specific people of a specific frequency. The sacred sexual practices of the Masonics are not well known, but they're not that unknown either. And basically, sacred male will copulate with sacred female inside of a circle of about, say, 21 people. And those 21 people are praying and meditating and holding hands and making contact as the sacred male and sacred female that are actual people that are out there, and the sacred female is becoming impregnated by the sacred male inside of that group setting. And they're doing that to bring in very specific levels of individuals that will most likely have a Kundalini awakening or be inculcated into that culture, into that belief system as a powerful figure or a powerful leader. And so they do this, and it's much the same way that a lot of tantric organizations will do the same thing. You'll have a copulating couple in the middle of a circle, or a number of copulating couples in the middle of the circle, and they will be striving for Kundalini awakening rather than impregnation. But some of them will do it for impregnation as well. It's interesting, if you go into some of the sacred Tibetan things, you often wonder, well, how do those Tibetan priests, how do they have a family line or a dynasty? They do. Well, they invite very, very specific women into the back portions of the Tibetan school there, where they're supposed to be practicing celibacy, but they bring these women in and they impregnate them. And some of these people are high-level lamas that will impregnate the women and cause them to have a child. And that child may coalesce around the energetic qualities of the sperm as it goes into the ovum, and that will attract a high-level spiritual person to come into the flesh and to begin a fleshly experience. Whether they become a great teacher or not, well, that's up to the karma and up to the environmental factors that surround that. Well, the same with this Masonic person. She's got a Masonic parents. The Masonic parents, practiced, obviously they coalesced with each other in order to make this person, and this person is now having Kundalini. As far as the seeing the entities, those I would just not pay any attention to, because I know that they have an agenda, and then that agenda is attached to the Masonic teachings, and I don't think the Masonic teachings are very benevolent teachings. They follow pretty much along the lines of the Egyptian mystery schools, and they're far more into power and control and things of that nature. And so I like what this person is doing. I think this person is doing really, really well. And I want you to encourage her, Amelia, if you would, listen to this program, because I think it'd be very, very helpful for her to advance along the path that the Kundalini Divine is deciding for her, not some group of individuals that may have Kundalini activation but aren't able to take it further because they still have such strong ego agenda wrapped up into what it is they're doing here. Over.
Yes, Chrism. Thank you. I will. The last question from the group. Hello, people. I have started having kriyas from the past 5 months. Nothing before that. I have experienced spontaneous yogic postures, vocalizations of various sounds, and other physical kriyas since then. I haven't experienced any energy in my spine or visions. Yet, after searching the net, I assumed it to be pranasana. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Sure.
Pranasana. But 2 days back, due to intense rubbing on my forehead during kriya, I got a skin split due to heat in the center of the forehead. I have read somewhere that Kundalini never causes harm. Now I'm confused. Is it Kundalini? Is it pranasana? Or something else? And why this forehead skin split? After this, I had almost negligible kriyas since. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Pranasana is basically what I was talking about earlier. Is like the pre-activation sequence for the person. After the person is activated, they kind of starting to go into kriyas. They're going into manifestations that will lead them up to spinal sweeps. This person is being directed by the Kundalini. I would say he is in the activation phase if he's having kriyas. Doesn't mean that he's going to have a full-on tactile experience. Obviously, he is pretty transfixed with phenomena right now, and he's trying to measure types of phenomena with his logical brain to try to figure out what is going on, and it's the figuring out and trying to understand that can slow the person down. At this point, he should be far more into devotion and trust. That would actually explain a lot more to him than the ego buckling down and trying to add phenomena with phenomena to equals this other phenomena. So with that individual, and the rubbing on the forehead would be as a form of the Kundalini communicating him to get out of his head. To get out of his head and get into his heart and get into surrendering to the manifestations that are occurring. And it also, the rubbing will also stimulate the sixth chakra. Although I've seen the picture that you're talking about, and that the rubbing right there is on another chakra that's between the sixth and the crown, kind of like right on the hairline, or right below the hairline where the golden helmet begins to emanate from. So yeah, this guy's being communicated to by the Kundalini, but he's still too far into his head, and he's still looking at phenomenological features as a way of discernment. Instead, he should be able to recognize. I mean, if he's going into kriyas, then you're getting energetic infusion, or you're not going into the kriyas. Okay, and so I would have to look at his equation much more closely to give a strong pronouncement. But for you, Centaur, you might want to tell him to specifically listen to this show as well.
Yes, Chrism, I will do. So that's it. No more questions?
No more questions. Okay, and Cole is asking, and please, you guys are going to make me scroll up here. Cole, does that go the other way around as well, as in trying to bring about the birth of a person that can be more easily possessed by entities? Yeah, you bet. That happens. That happens too, and that is a dark way. The interesting thing is with these organizations that do this, they like the Masons or any of the other organizations, as they're doing this, they're basically using their ego and entity infestation in order to corrupt the physical flesh. And the physical flesh will not always allow that corruption to occur. Look at this woman. Look at what she's doing, or he's doing. I don't know if it's a woman or not. I'm just feeling that. She's making other choices. She's saying, forget all that. I'm going to do it this way. So, the soul force itself also has control over what these things are and how they go. You can have your parents, they can copulate till the cows come home, and in the middle of this circle with people weaving and chanting and saying, oh, bring in, whatever, bring in Astarta or bring in Ozymandias or bring in the greatest force that will give us the greatest power, to force that we may control the way this earth works. They're all going for that, by the way. That is the want of gain aspect of the ego that is perforating, and I mean perforating their prayers, punching holes in their prayers so that the energy falls flat. But that's what they do, and so the dark forces can also do that, Cole. Not a problem. And then Vincent has a question, and Vincent says, chrism, when entities try to establish motor control, I find an emotion in my consciousness that feels like force, like this. Oh, yeah, I think I may have been, that's not quite sure what you're saying there, Vincent. You need to really work on the clarity of your question, my friend. But let's go with the first one first. Establish motor control. I find emotion in my consciousness that feels like force. You need to stop playing around with the entities, Vincent. Let me say it again. You need to stop playing around with the entities, Vincent. Don't let them control you. Take away the connection. Clear the top of your head like I told you to do, or suggested that you do. Clear it with both hands, wiping over your entire crown. Clear your arms the same way, by just, stroking your arm, so if they have motor control, if they're trying to establish motor control, then therefore that they're trying to establish motor control, so you don't let them establish a motor control. You don't allow it. And then he goes to another question. He says, oh, yeah, I think I may have been possessed from childhood on. And a lot of kids get possession. But they're also guided. They also have angels as well. And here we go. Don't worry about that, Vincent. Being possessed from childhood simply means that you're aware of these things now. And you can take care of these things now. It is time for you to take care of these things now. And Atlantis Seeker is saying, is it okay to listen to music while doing the 5 Tibetans? Yeah. Music has the way to... music has a way of taking you out of your body. Kundalini is the action of keeping you in your body. Okay, so... if you could say specific forgivenesses, like I forgive John Smith for hitting me during the first Tibetan. I forgive Susie Jones for stealing my purse for the second Tibetan. If you can do that while you're listening to the music, I'm good with that. But otherwise, just listening to music that is, it's designed to take you out of the body. No. I mean, be attuned to the music that is within your body already, the music of the Kundalini. And Vincent comes back and he says, I'm doing that already. Okay, that's good. I guess that means clearing it. I had my spiritual body controlled from childhood on. It's hard to resist. Yes, it is, my friend. It is hard to resist. And if you had this from childhood on, that is of a karmic nature, because children are, they are... When you're a child, this is where a lot of the karma hits, because you're not in control of your life. Okay, and certainly within that context, you have not been allowed to control yourself, and so this is of a karmic nature. And so now that you have reached this level of information, Vincent, you can totally do it. And yes, it may be hard to resist at first, but as you keep doing it, as you keep doing it and you keep self-correcting away from that type of motor control possession, it'll get easier and easier and easier, and you will get stronger and stronger and stronger. And I have full confidence in you, my friend Vincent. I have full confidence in all of you, in Alana Seeker and Haley and Mary Jean and Vincent and Cole. Very, very, very strong confidence in all of you. And even in guest 1286 and guest 1348. Looks like we have about 3 minutes to go. I'm gonna put Rosemary on again. Rosemary, I would like you to make your announcements again. Make sure you put in your phone number and your email. Oh, no. Come on, you got to come up to your phone. You get up to that microphone.
Hi.
There you go. Hello.
How are you?
Oh, boy. Okay, looks like it's not going to happen for Rosemary today.
Yes, I'm here.
Well, then make your announcements into the microphone, please.
Great. Yes, thank you. November 14th and 15th, our Kundalini seminar here in Minnesota, and my phone number is 651-452-3161, or rosemaryg@usinternet.com, and my computer is on all the time, so I'll be happy to receive your questions, any comments that you'd like to make, and hope to see you there.
Thank you. I do encourage people of Minnesota to come there. I know that the people of Minnesota have many channelers and many of the other types of people trying. We have a wolf here. We've saved a wolf, so you're going to hear the wolf howling a little bit in the background. She wants a walk, and I'll be taking her for a walk later on today after the show. But you'll hear the my apologies. But she's a Kundalini creature. She's beautiful, wonderful, wonderful person. People of Minnesota, you have many different Kundalini opportunities. I will suggest that you follow the opportunities that your heart beckons you towards. I have done 3 Kundalini Awakening seminars in the Minnesota area. And so I have people there who know of what I teach, and some people now are using what I teach in order to bolster their own Kundalini resume. So if it's not put on by chrism Kundalini, then you're not getting it directly from me, but you're getting it directly from somebody who's been taught by me, but has decided to kind of co-opt that information for their own purposes. So. Definitely come to see me if you are going to come to that seminar. Be happy to meet you. Be happy to help you. Be also there there's a magazine event called The Edge, and what's it called, Rosemary?
Holistic. It's I don't have it in front of me. I apologize.
Yeah.
It's the expo of the Twin City area for our work. And a lot of what you just described as well.
It's called The Edge.
It's where listeners for what we have will be.
Eileen, are you listening?
Yes, I am.
What's the Edge event? What's it called?
Well, it's actually not an Edge event. It's a holistic expo, and it's called the Minneapolis Holistic Expo. It's November 7th and 8th at the Earl Brown Heritage Center. And you will be speaking Saturday, November 7th at 3 p.m.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you, everyone.